What's up, people? It is October 11th, 2024, and this is my live review of the Aeneid by Virgil. And so, before I tell you about this, I'll tell you about the Iliad and the Odyssey. So, Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, I read both of them a couple of years ago, and they were great. Both of them were great. The Iliad's quite a bit longer than the Odyssey, which is why they tell you to read the Odyssey first. And the Odyssey has more epic poem kind of stuff going around and fighting monsters and taking the boat all over the place. And it's just more of an adventure than the Iliad. The Iliad is nonstop bloody battles that are just insane. And the thing about both of those is the English translations are quite simple to read. There are references to many characters, obviously, and you might not know a lot of them unless you do some deep dive into Greek history or mythology or both. But it's still readable and understandable. You get the gist of what's going on. This thing, you kind of get the gist of what's going on, but it's a lot more veiled than the Iliad and the Odyssey are, which makes it harder to read. And they're both, well, not both, all three are considered epic poems. And this is Roman. And Virgil was conscripted to write this at the behest of the king or leader, whatever he's called in that country. He wanted to have some document that showed how great he was. And apparently he read the first, the king guy or whatever he was, he read the first short piece of it and liked it. And apparently later on, there's a lot of stuff that kind of makes him more fallible and not as grand as he probably would have hoped for. And the other part of this is that this was uncompleted. Virgil died before he got finished with it. And he actually told people to burn it or get rid of it, and they didn't because they felt like it was important. So it clearly is an important book because it shows a lot of the history between that king and this author, and a lot of the mythology. And I don't want to say history because this is more considered fiction than the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad and the Odyssey, while they are pretty extravagant, there is a lot of things in there that historians believe are true. So the thing with those two books, it's kind of hard to figure out where truth ends and fiction begins. And it's up to the reader, I guess, to decide what he believes. Whereas this one pretty much is mostly or all fiction. But the thing that I don't like about it is it's very difficult to read. And there's several reasons it's hard to read. One is the English translation, apparently, is what I was just reading about on Google, is that the English translation kind of damaged the original phrasing of the writing. And it's in very short sentences, right? So I'll just give you, I'll show you first. Let's see here. They don't even take up but 2/3 of the page, the sentences, right? Or stanzas, whatever you want to call them. So let's read you a little section. Then Venus, quote, I can hardly claim such honor. The girls of Tyre are used to wearing quivers and bind their calves with scarlet hunting boots. You see a Punic country, men of Tyre, the city of Agenor, but at the border the Libyans lie, a tribe that swears by war. Our ruler here is Dido, she who left her city when she had to flee her brother. The tale of wrong is intricate and long, but I shall trace its chief events in order. So it sounds like there's some history in there, but from what I read, it's mostly fiction. So, or maybe all fiction. The problem is it goes on referring to all of these people and gods, and it's a lot more of that than the Iliad and the Odyssey, where you kind of have to know some of these Roman myths, I think, to understand more or less what's going on. And I found myself going on YouTube. There's this guy that gives short summaries of every book in here. And suffice to say, after listening to the summaries of each chapter, after I had read them, I'm sitting there going, it's still pretty weird. And the main gist of this thing is the establishment of the kingdom of Rome and how great it was, I guess. But that part of it doesn't come into this thing until well over halfway. So you have to go through a lot of just kind of weird stories to get to the main purpose, I guess I'd say, of the book. And at that point, you're probably going to be sitting there going, what the heck am I reading? It's very frustrating. If I had to tell a regular old person who's not a historian / person of Roman mythology, deep understanding, and Roman fables and things of that sort, I would say skip this one. It's not enjoyable to me. I'm not saying it ain't a great document. You could get through it. It's not that thick. I mean, it's this is 331 pages. But then it goes into a section which is like a glossary that goes from page 332 all the way to 395. So it's like 63 pages of explanation that you could read to understand. It says gods, half-gods, mortals, peoples, places, a glossary. And at that point, it's becoming a study in Roman myth rather than reading a book. You almost need to take a class on this to fully get it and understand what's going on. Whereas the Iliad and Odyssey, you could read both of them and go, yeah, I get it. The other thing I found was weird in here was they had a story about a Cyclops. And I'm sitting there going, this sounds like Sinbad the Sailor when I was watching Ray Harryhausen movies and stuff where the little claymation guys are fighting with the Cyclops and poke his eye out and all that stuff. And I'm going, all right, what's going on here? Did Sinbad, the stories come from Aeneid? And apparently they didn't. The Sinbad stories came from 1001 Nights, or Tale of 1001 Nights, I think it's called, which is an Arabian, very important document also. So some of these stories also in here are directly kind of copied from the Odyssey or the Iliad, or maybe both. I'm not sure. I read that they kind of, I don't want to say he stole it, but he kind of made them his version, I guess. So if you've already read Iliad and Odyssey, you're going to recognize stuff that you've seen before. It's kind of like, what? So just in general, I could understand perhaps why he wanted it burned, maybe because he hadn't finished it, figured the purpose wasn't fully fleshed out. Maybe he figured it was too much to serve a king. Maybe he felt like it wasn't giving the king his fair due after being requested to write it. I don't know. I'm curious about why he wanted it burned or destroyed. But, you know, I accept the fact that it is an important document and it's worth reading, I guess, if you want to get a feel of the Roman epic in comparison to the Greek epics, but I just like the Greek ones better. Iliad and Odyssey were both great, and I didn't like this one.